but had access to nonetheless. These harmful experiences shattered trust, caused or contributed to the declined mental illness or their mental health, and low self-esteem. This also drastically impacted school performance and engagement. Social media can be used for good when content creators distribute socially responsible content and our children, youth, and even adults engage in social media literacy education to ensure responsible and aware consumption that decreases both the student harm and the residual impacts on families and school communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiana. And last, it's my pleasure to welcome up Hampstead Hill Academy Principal Matt Hornbeck.
Thanks so much, everyone. I just want to say what a joy it is to work at Hampstead Hill, and I could not appreciate the teachers and parents and students at Hampstead Hill more and be more proud of the work we do. I'm Principal Matt Hornbeck. I've served as principal at HHA for 20 years, so I've seen the rise of social media and the harm that it causes. Principals across Baltimore and Maryland and the nation are dealing with the negative impacts of children being told by social media what to think, how to look, how to dress, who's cool and who is not. All of the carriers provide free phones with every family plan. The confusing apps and settings that can block or monitor children are a struggle for parents to manage. And the incessant need to feed advertisers with clicks is what drives the social media business model. In many ways, social media can be even worse than kids smoking cigarettes or vaping because social media addiction starts even younger and immediately comes for a young person's mind. It hijacks normal, healthy thinking. It sucks up so much time and keeps the user wanting more and more. It's not an overstatement to say it can steal big chunks of a childhood. We need to model and teach restorative practices and kindness in schools, but as my colleague said yesterday, the urge to check your phone is stronger than any consequence we have at school. Here's the problem as told to me by principals in high schools and middle schools around the city. One principal says, tomorrow I will spend a large part of my day surfing through the social media posts that have led to conflicts between students. Students will spend the weekend going back and forth, and then we have to deal with the aftermath in school. Teachers say it's the #1 distraction in school. Another says it impacts attendance because students tell me they are up late on their phones, which causes them to be late to school. My students admit that they're on their phones after 2 a.m., and it definitely impacts achievement because of the constant distractions to instruction. A third colleague says social media is a terrible distraction and weighs on young people's mental health. The biggest problem is parents who struggle to control its use. They're unaware of the number of platforms and identities kids create or get consumed by. It makes space for anonymous bullies who often aren't even students and who just like spreading negativity. Most of the negative traffic occurs when they're online at home with their phones. The problem at high schools is the time it takes away from study habits. Finally, another principal points out that almost every conflict we deal with stems from social media, and it takes so much time away from instruction. Kids say very mean things about other kids on social media that are hurtful and make some kids not want to come to school. It can and does impact attendance when the victim of a post or participant is hurt emotionally or physically. We recently became a cell phone-free school, which, as Chief Sivan mentioned, is not the solution to our problem, but merely a workaround. But since that happened, and social media is much, much less of a thing here, our staff has witnessed overwhelming gratitude and relief expressed by students because they get the chance to be kids. Today is very exciting. Our staff and parents are wildly supportive of the courageous stand Baltimore City has taken and the stand A.G. Brown is taking today in filing these lawsuits to protect our students online. Our future as a city and state is at risk until we get a handle on the impact of social media on our children. Thanks very much.
Good, thank you. Now we'll take some questions, if any, from the press.
Hi, Emily Hofstetter, WYPR News. Can you say more about the consequences that you and the other AGs want from these social media? Oh, it's specifically Meta in this case, correct? Can you say more about what consequences you want from Meta?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, I mean, when you think about when lawsuits are filed, sometimes you're seeking damages, right, because harm has been done. But more often than not, you want injunctive relief. You want the bad behavior to stop. And as I convened with attorneys general several weeks ago as we were discussing this case, we are uniformly in agreement that the most important thing we can do is to have the social media platform and the providers like Meta discontinue their practices that are addicting children to social media. You heard about going down the rabbit holes and the continuous scrolling and the constant alerts. So we want to work with and be in a discussion with Meta and other platform providers to stop the bad behavior. That's first and foremost. That's how we keep our kids safe.
Are you seeking damages, though?
In some of the actions, damages are being sought.
I'll let others have a turn.
Attorney General Ken Duffy of BL News Radio in
Hey, Ken.
Baltimore. From Meta's point of view, since a couple of years ago, they have argued that the research is mixed when it comes to the effects on kids. They say that they take precautions already since the studies have come out. What do you say directly to Meta in terms of their response to this kind of activity? And do you think are you saying basically it has not gone far enough?
Exactly, it's not enough. The response is it's not enough.
And again, some of the studies have been mixed. In fact, the American Psychological Association found that social media use is not inherently beneficial or harmful to young people. But what do you say to the messaging that there's one side that says it does and there's another that doesn't?
Say the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, when you look at, and quite frankly, what you hear from our principals, from our students, from our parents, that they are the face that are in front of those numbers of the harm of social media. They are addicting kids. They are creating distractions in our schools. They are contributing, not solely, but they do contribute to teen suicide. And attorneys general are prepared with experts and other evidence to demonstrate the harm that is the result of the practices by Meta of luring young people to their platforms, addicting them, and creating the harms that we're prepared to show.
How you doing? I'm Stefan Dingle with WJZ. Good to see you.
Hey, Stefan.
Good to see you, my friend. As I've been listening to this, I was very intrigued by the student who mentioned what the school already does to try to limit social media. I just don't know if we can get more detail into that. How do you think that kind of bridges the gap as you kind of seek this change from Meta at the very top? Because as we know, social media, it's kind of a wild world that doesn't really have any constraints. What can schools do more of in the interim to save students from this mental health crisis, and also just paying attention in the classroom, knowing that everything is at our hand in a phone?
Sure, and I'm going to let Principal Hornbeck speak to that, but first let me reiterate a point that he made. What happens in our schools, whether requiring students to put their devices in bags so that they're not available during the day, that's a workaround. It's an important workaround to minimize distractions during the day. But the distractions are 24/7. They're continual. And the addictive nature of these platforms creates stress even in a school that is taking precautions or measures to minimize usage of those devices. And so we've got to take sort of a all of the above approach, right? What's happening in our schools and what we're requiring of the platforms themselves to discontinue these addictive practices. But Principal, do you want to say anything more?
I think you could be a principal. I would just concur and also say it's just a Band-Aid. Anything we do at the school level, and you said it yourself, is just a workaround and a Band-Aid. And many schools won't have the resources that are needed to put that in place. It requires a lot of, it's a lift that teachers and principals are often, frankly, unable to make. Putting a phone away is, I mean, you could ask you or any of your colleagues, if someone said, put your phone away for 7 hours, it's definitely a challenge. And so for kids, it's even more so. I would yield a couple of minutes, or if you have anything else to add. Okay, thanks so much.
And if I could just, the parent, yeah, I think this kind of ties in as well. You have kids, you know, outside of the school, you know, that's kind of in the school day, but how do you navigate that at home as a parent, knowing that this is kind of inevitable? You need to communicate with your kid, but you also can't track their every movement and what they're doing.
I use everything. So your Wi-Fi service will have parental controls. Your cell phone service will also have parental controls. There are other apps that you can utilize, such as Bark, that has been very helpful for us. There are time limits in my home where Wi-Fi shuts off, and I'm the only one that has the password. And while I sit here looking slightly dignified, I am all the way a black mother. So I wish they might ask me for some more time. So we are very restrictive when it comes to that, but that also comes from the history and the work that I've done as far as helping people that have been escaping from sex trafficking. A lot of that the grooming can start through social media. So to me, it's been important just to be overly active, but there's a responsibility that parents have to understand how social media works as well. And I think it could be overwhelming because there's a new platform like every 5 to 10 business days. So it can be very, very overwhelming, but it's our responsibility to understand it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Emily Hofstetter, WYPR. You're good. I was wondering if you could say, perhaps are there investigations into other social media companies? I understand you might not be able to say which ones, but for instance, I mean, Meta, Facebook, and Instagram are declining in use among young people. Are you looking at some of those others, Snapchat, TikTok, etc.?
Yeah, what I'll say is that you are right, and there are other social media platform providers beyond Meta. But as far as investigations, as you know, we don't confirm or deny the existence of other investigations.
Okay, thank you. And then my another question I had, my last question is, a number of studies have identified that Black teenagers are the highest demographic of teens that use social media. In your complaints, are there any, civil rights an issue in any of these? Did race, was that a factor in any of them?
That's
Ordinarily.
You want to come up?
Bill Gruen, Consumer Protection Division. No, not in our complaint. The civil rights is not one of the causes of action. We brought a complaint under the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, as the Attorney General mentioned.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. I work with great people.
Yes.